When things go wrong as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must but do not ever quit. Success is a failure turned inside out. Let's talk and clear the clouds of doubt.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome to Let's Talk. I'm your moderator, Omar Dunlap, greeting you with the Muslim greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum. We have with us, as always, our host, Brother Idris Tawfiq. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
And we have with us, of course, our studio audience. Assalamu alaikum. And now I'd like to turn the time over to Brother Idris for his reflections.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala ashraf al-mursaleen Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Wa salamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most compassionate, all praise be to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. Peace and blessings of Allah be upon His final messenger Muhammad, and may the peace and the blessings and the mercy of Allah be upon all of you watching this program today. Really, today, if we had 2 hours, 10 hours, 20 hours, a year, we wouldn't have long enough to talk. Because our show this evening is about Palestine. And for me to give a reflection on Palestine in just 5-10 minutes, I have to be very careful not to get very worked up. Because we're not politicians, we're not talking about politics, but Palestine is a subject that touches deep to the heart of every Muslim. And so to begin the show, I want to reflect on something that affected me on this whole issue of Palestine. The person that taught me most about the Palestinian issue was a little boy called Yahya. Yahya is 8 years old. Now, when the slaughter was going on in Gaza, just over a year ago, I visited, there's a hospital in Cairo called Mustashfa Mahad al-Nasr. It's called Victory Institute Hospital. And I write for a newspaper, a column in a newspaper, and I said to the editor, why don't I go and visit some of the wounded from Gaza? And I go for maybe half an hour, and I'll write a piece about my visit, and we publish it in the newspaper. The editor said, good idea, off you go. So I went the next day. Half an hour I was supposed to stay. I stayed for 4 hours. And during the 4 hours, I couldn't drag myself away. And I only left after 4 hours because my heart was breaking. I couldn't bear it anymore. I couldn't stand to be there any longer. Because during those 4 hours, I met Muslims. We call ourselves Muslims. Brothers and sisters, we don't even get up in the morning to pray. And we call ourselves Muslims. And in this hospital, I met young men and boys who'd lost their legs and their arms and their little babies, and their houses had been destroyed, and their land completely turned into rubbish. And they were real Muslims. That afternoon, you'd imagine I would have heard people saying, oh, what are we going to do about Palestine? Who's going to save us and help us? I didn't hear that at all. That afternoon, the only words I heard were, Alhamdulillah, Subhanallah, Allahu Akbar, from these men who'd lost everything. And it taught me what it is to be a Muslim, to be a man. Because these were real Muslims. Little Yahya was the first person I met. Yahya was sitting on his bed, 8 years old. Little Yahya was waiting for his 26th operation. His 26th operation. He hadn't been injured in the latest slaughter in Gaza, but he'd been injured when he was inside his mother's womb 8 years before, and poison gas had been dropped from helicopter gunships in the sky, and his mother had inhaled the poison, and the poor little mite had been deformed for the rest of his life. And he was waiting for his 26th operation. And I said to him, Yahya, come, can I have a photo with you? You talk of a photo opportunity. I said, come. And he was all bound in plaster of Paris. He could hardly move. And he forced his way onto the bed and smiled as best he could. And if you look at my website, idristawfiq.com, there's a gallery of the photos there of the heroes I met that afternoon in the hospital. I met a young man, for example. He'd been cycling home from his work at lunchtime. He worked in a petrol station, in a gas station. And he was going home for lunch on his bike. And out of nowhere, 82 fighter jets appeared. Out of nowhere. And they started dropping bombs. And they dropped a bomb on the building where his aunt lived. So he rushed into the building to help his aunt. And when he was in, another bomb fell. And the poor boy was in a coma because of what had been happened. And what had been happening. And as a result of that visit, that day, I said to the men at the end of the visit, and I could tell you so many stories. I met one man, and he was lying, and all his limbs were encased in metal, keeping them together. And the day before, his little baby had died back in Gaza. And I said to him, I said, brother, in all this, where is peace going to come from? And do you know what he said? Peace, he said, we have peace already. We don't need America to give us peace. We don't need this country or that country to give it. We have peace in our hearts because Islam gives us peace. They are the men I met that day. And at the end of talking to them, I was so touched by the whole thing. I said, brothers, look, I said, I want to help you, but I don't have any money. I don't have any money in my pocket. I don't have any money in the bank. I might dress in a nice suit. I said, but I haven't got any money to give you. But I promise you that from this day forward, I make a promise to you today that wherever I travel to all over the world speaking about Islam, I will tell the world about you. I'll tell the world about Palestine. And since that day, some people have been saying to me, what's that badge you wear, brother? Is it an Italian flag? Indeed, it isn't an Italian flag. It's a Palestinian flag. And I wear this flag not because I'm a supporter of this state or that. I wear it to support my brothers and sisters in Palestine who are suffering. In fact, I spoke at a conference in Manchester a couple of weeks back, a Palestine conference. And one of the speakers was the very famous Palestinian speaker, Azam at-Tamimi. And he said a very interesting thing during the conference. He said, I'm not looking for a two-state solution or a one-state solution. He said, I don't want a state. I quote him exactly. They're not my words, they're his. He said, we already have 22 stupid states without looking for another one. He said, what I want is justice. Now, I'm not a politician. I don't know about this state or that. But I know that in Gaza, my brothers and sisters are hurting. And it's long time that the untruths that have been told about Palestine be uncovered, and that Muslims stand up and speak the truth. Because there are powerful forces who've spoken about Palestine for too long. For 60 years we've been asleep, and we've allowed people to say things that are untrue. Well, it's now time for us to wake up. When I was at that Palestine conference, I shared with the delegates there, and I share it with you today on this program as my thought for today. I said, if you got a text message now telling you, sitting home watching this program, if you got a text message telling you that your mother had had a heart attack and had been taken to hospital, you would rush out of your house. You'd even leave the television on. You'd rush to your mother's bedside. If you got a text message saying that your little brother has been knocked down on his bicycle in the street, you'd rush to your little brother. Or your uncle. Your uncle has been involved in a terrible road accident. You'd rush to his side. Well, I tell you, I'm here today, brothers and sisters, to send you a text message. The text message I send you is that your little brother, this day, is trying to get to school in Palestine. But Israeli occupation soldiers have stopped him, and he's crying, and he wants his Baba. I'm here to text you today and tell you that your sister is trying to get to university, but she's being humiliated at a checkpoint and made fun of. I'm here to text you today to say that your uncle wants to get to his olive groves, but someone has built an enormous wall and he can't get to his land. That's the Palestine situation. It isn't a theory. As Muslims, we are brothers and sisters to one another. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't come up with the idea, oh, let's call ourselves brothers. That's a nice idea. He called us brothers because that's what we are. Now, I put it to you today, my dear brothers and sisters, we either believe that or we don't. Our brothers and sisters in Palestine are suffering. While you are sitting watching this program, drinking your cup of tea and your crisps, our brothers are tunneling like rats under the ground, looking for food and water, looking for cement to build their homes instead of living in mud huts. So I urge, it's easy to get worked up over this issue. I urge you, instead of crying your eyes out over the people of Palestine, do something to help them.
Jazakallah khair for those thoughts, Brother Idris. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. You're watching Let's Talk.
Earth, the human heart, greed, exploitation, hatred, all diseases of the heart. For the cure, join Huda TV every Sunday at 20 GMT for Moments for the Heart.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back to Let's Talk. I'm your moderator, Omar Dunlap. And in this section, we're going to look at some questions that we asked some people about Palestine. So we're going to take a look right now to see what they had to say, inshallah.
They can help them financially by sending money or clothes, etc. They can use the media to show the world and to let the people know what the Zionists did in Palestine, what kind of crimes they did, etc. And last but not the least, they can pray for them, because that's the most important thing, to pray for them. I helped them financially. I gave some money when they collected for Palestine, and I wrote an article about the crimes in Palestine, and we published it in a magazine. And I prayed for them, of course. And today still we pray for the people of Palestine.
That was very interesting, Brother Idris. What are your thoughts on what we heard?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. There's so much to say, really. There's so much to say. There's a difference, let's be quite clear. There's a difference between Zionism and Judaism. Let's say that first of all, very clearly. Muslims and Jews can talk to one another in a very friendly, very respectful way. We respect what other people believe. We may not agree with what they believe, but we respect it. And so as Muslims, we can dialogue with Jews and we can respect their beliefs. After all, we believe in one God. Zionism is something altogether different. Zionism is a secular movement that for one reason or another settled upon the land of Palestine as a homeland for the Jewish people. And I believe that there were very many other places that were possibilities of where they could go to. Tanzania was one, Argentina was another one, and eventually they settled on Palestine, calling it Israel, and imbuing it with all sorts of biblical references and phrases to give it credence, and most of them made up, really. The brother talked about some things we can do. Maybe we'll speak to the audience first, and then we can say a few other things.
Does anyone have a question? Yes, go ahead.
How can you see the Palestinian question in its humanitarian scene?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. You see, on a human level, we would say there's no way out of this. On a human level, we'd say, where is the future here? Where is justice going to come from? Where's peace going to come from? What's the answer on a human level? But the level of faith, the eyes of faith are completely different. I mean, with the eyes of faith, we can look and see that the Soviet Empire that lasted for 70 years, it was one of the world's superpower, not just a superpower, but a super-duper power. One of the greatest military machines ever. It just crumbled and ceased to exist. We look at the Berlin Wall. You know, 6 months before the fall of the Berlin Wall, no one would have imagined that this wall would come tumbling down. Apartheid in South Africa existed for many, many decades, a wicked regime, and no one imagined that the president of a non-apartheid South Africa would walk out of the gates of his prison, where he'd been imprisoned for many years, President Nelson Mandela. And with the eyes of faith, we can see that the victory belongs not to this government or that government, but to Allah. That's the answer. You know, and with the eyes of faith, we can look. History's a good thing to use. You know, the Crusaders had a kingdom in Palestine. They were there for 200 years. 200 years. They had a capital and they had kings with crowns on their heads and armies and money and everything. And when their time had come, they packed up their bags and left. Some of them stayed on because they loved the land and they were allowed to live there and worship freely. And the rest just went home to where they came from to start with. So when we look at this so-called Israel in Palestine and say, where is the future going to come from? How are we going to resolve it? Let's use a little hindsight from history. And let's realize that when the time is right, Allah will give victory to Islam and to our suffering brothers and sisters. And those people who've oppressed them for so long will pack up their bags and either leave or they will stay and worship freely with their Muslim friends, as has been the case throughout the history of Islam. So I'm never pessimistic. You know, we believe in Allah. How could we be pessimistic? It would be shirk for us to believe otherwise. It would be idol worship. We'd be worshipping the idols of power and governments and armies and economies. They're not what's in charge. Allah is in charge of this world. So it may take a long time, it may take a short time, who knows? It might all change next week. Allah knows for sure. So we put our trust in Allah. But as well as doing that, brother, we, as Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, tie your camel and trust in Allah. You know, you don't turn up in the village on your camel and then go and do your business and say to the camel, oh, well, just stay there, be good. You know, I'm sure you'll be there when I come back. No, you tie your camel up and then you trust in Allah. Well, with Palestine too, all our trust is in Allah, but we do the utmost we can do ourselves first.
Very good. Do we have another question? Go ahead, brother.
Really, I want to ask a very, very important question. My question is, how can we reach the unity in our Islamic and Arabic world till we can overcome our all crises?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This really is a very important question, brother. No, I mean, there is a lack of unity in Palestine itself that tears Palestine apart and tears our hearts apart when we see it, when we see different leaders fighting each other in Palestine. And who is to gain by this but the enemies of Islam and the enemies of Palestine? They're the ones to gain. As a Muslim nation, we are very sadly divided. Some people saying, well, we can't do anything. Other people almost in the pocket of other nations. All I can say is that the victory, the answer to the last question, the victory belongs to Allah. We need, you know, as we said in another show, we need to fit our oxygen masks first. We need to sort ourselves out as Muslims. We need to live as true Muslims. We need a reawakening of Islam within the Muslim nation itself. And when this Islam wakes... You see, I believe that Palestine it's like a litmus test of the well-being of Muslims, and it has always been that through the centuries. When Muslims are living as Muslims, Palestine has been in the hands of Muslims. And when our faith has been weak, Palestine has been in the hands of others. So it needs us to, for too long we've been asleep. For 60 years we've been lounging around while other people have walked in and taken the land of Islam from us. Well, it's time for us to wake up and use every legitimate and democratic method to win back the land of Palestine. I'm not advocating any violence or fighting. Let's do what we're allowed to do. Insha'Allah.
Very good. Do we have another? Go ahead, brother.
Allah Almighty is saying, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah never changes our circumstances until we change ourselves firstly. So I think that to be able to change what's happening there in Palestine, we have to, or we should, to change ourselves. I think we have a lot of weapons to do, to support them. For example, we can pray for Allah to support them. And we can boycott the products of enemies to be able to support our brothers in Palestine. Thanks.
You should be sitting here, brother. I think next time we'll invite you to come and sit here. I often say that Muslim women, Muslim sisters have a very, very strong role to play in supporting the Palestinian cause. Why? And I say it to you now, sisters, when you go shopping, when you do the weekly shopping with your kids, you take, little Marwa and Yusuf with you into the supermarket, and they say, shall we buy this one? And you will say to them, no, we won't buy that product. We'll buy this one instead. Because that product helps people to oppress our brothers and sisters in Palestine. It helps people to hurt our brothers and sisters. We won't buy that can of brown fizzy drink. We'll buy this one instead. Or we'll buy fresh juice instead. Or water. We won't buy this bag of crisps or chips, because these contribute money that helps to oppress your brothers and sisters, your cousins in Palestine. We'll buy this one instead. So our Muslim sisters have a great, great role to play. They're the guardians of the household. And they're also the guardians of how we spend our money. And there are 1.3 billion Muslims in the world. And it's not illegal to spend your money however you want to spend it. I can spend my money whatever I want to spend. So if I choose not to buy that particular red can of brown fizzy drink, because that helps to oppress my brothers and sisters in Palestine, and I choose instead to buy this one, by the way, I hope you get what I'm suggesting there. There's a lot we can do. There are whole websites listing things we should avoid buying. But more than that, there are many things we can do. I mean, when did you last write to your Member of Parliament about the situation? There are whole organizations, and all they do for these Zionists, all that they spend their whole day just sending emails to congressmen and senators and members of Parliament about anything that touches their interests. Well, there are 1.3 billion. We should do the same. We should bombard people, not with bombs, but with letters, telling them that we don't agree with this. They should stop. We won't vote for you again if you support this action. If we took it seriously, the whole situation could be resolved very quickly. Unfortunately, maybe it's just talk. I attended an event in New York organized by Yemeni brothers, young Yemeni brothers, and it was called Palestine Emotion is Not Enough. And they were saying it's not enough just to sit crying your eyes out in front of the TV saying, why doesn't someone do something? Why doesn't someone come and save us? They said, no, this is what we'll do. We'll raise money. More than raising money, we'll raise awareness of what's going on. We'll let the truth be told that's been hidden for too long. We're not offending anyone. We're not harming anyone. We just want the truth to be told. And what has become the received wisdom, the received information about Palestine, there's another viewpoint. There's a Muslim viewpoint which is different. Now, for example, I meet people all over the world and I give them copies of my book, Looking for Peace in the Land of the Prophets. And I say to them, I don't necessarily want you to agree with what's in the book, but I just want you to listen to the opinion in it. Because it's important that you know what Muslims feel about Palestine, that it cuts them to the quick, it cuts their heart, it tears their hearts apart. This isn't an issue over land. This isn't an issue of saying, you have this little bit of land and we'll swap you that little bit of land. This is the land blessed by Allah. This is the land, glory be to Allah, who did take his messenger on a night journey from the sacred mosque in Mecca to the farthest mosque of Al-Azhar. Al-Aqsa Mosque is at the heart of Islam. We believe as Muslims, you see how worked up I'm getting? We believe as Muslims that Al-Aqsa has existed. When was it built? Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was asked, when was Al-Aqsa Mosque built? The reply he gave, 40 years after the Kaaba. Now as Muslims we believe that the Kaaba was built by Prophet Adam ﷺ, or soon after that, and later rebuilt by Ibrahim ﷺ. Al-Aqsa has existed since the beginning of time, and it's been part of our Islamic faith since then. This isn't an issue of land. It's an issue of faith and of justice.
Very well. Well, let's go to our audience real quick and see if we have about a minute left, so if they want to make a comment or a question.
All right. I want to look at the other side, the Jews. They have been claiming along history that they're the chosen people, and Palestine has been chosen by God for the Jews. And I would like to know how much this is true.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We haven't really got time to answer it in the time we've got. Maybe we'll discuss it in the next section. But for sure, Islam believes that at one stage the children of Israel were the chosen people of God, and that they were promised this land as their own land. That's what we believe as Muslims. Because we believe that there was a time in their history when the children of Israel were living as true Muslims. They were following Allah's will and following His command, and He gifted them this land, but just as Prophet Adam, for example, was allowed to live in the garden, Allah doesn't change His mind. He doesn't go back on His promises. But Adam didn't do what Allah wanted him to do. So Allah said, okay, we take this back. Just as in the same way the children of Israel had been promised this, if you do this, or when they stopped living as Muslims, when they stopped following the will of Allah, Allah said, okay, we take it back and we give it to someone else. So, were they the chosen people of God? Yes, they were. Were they given the promised land? Yes, they were. But it was taken off them, and was given to people who were living faithfully as Muslims.
Very well. And I think we'll probably get into that in the next section, inshallah. But for now, we're going to take a quick break, so don't go anywhere. You're watching Let's Talk.
The true life of the Muslim starts at death. If you wish to enhance your knowledge of the Islamic perspective on the hereafter, this life doesn't go on forever, but we do so little to prepare for it because most of us don't know what happens after this life ends. If you want to be amongst those who know, then join us every Saturday at 1930 GMT for the inevitable journey.
Bismillah. Welcome back to Let's Talk. I'm your moderator, Omar Dunlap, and Brother Idris, of course, we have with us. Would you like to introduce our guest?
I'd be delighted to. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Today we're delighted to have with us Brother Hani Ramadan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Brother Hani is managing editor of the Politics in Depth section at Islam Online. Could you just tell us a little bit about that first?
Yes, the page is a political analysis page. We publish analysis, opinion pieces, different things, especially the hotspots, and with a special focus to the Muslim world events.
Okay, so it's politics for sure.
Yes, the political angles, the political affairs of the Muslim world in general, and some hotspots around the world.
So for what, for example, at the moment is important on your page?
Actually, the Iraqi elections comes first, and then at that time. And still, Palestine is our always guest on the page.
What sort of coverage do you give for Palestine then? Just before we talk about it a bit more, what is your page at Islam Online? What angle do you take?
Actually, we have like different things about Palestine. Especially, we have sometimes we launch special pages when there is like major events. So that happened like at the time of the war on Gaza, and then we had a special page on that. And actually, we're trying to see how the thinkers all over the globe, Muslims and non-Muslims, think of that kind of event, which is very, very, brutal actions against Muslims in that part of the world.
You know, last year, 2009, Jerusalem, Al-Quds, was named the capital of Arab culture. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
You see, there we are. I wrote about it many, many times. Capital of Arab culture, and no one even knew about it. This is one of our problems.
Yes, actually I think so, because, the mainstream media is not focusing much more about Palestine and the Palestinian issue.
Why is that?
I don't know, but actually because, the weight of the Palestinian cause itself, is getting less attention from our side and our mainstream media of the Arab world. We are just paying much attention to some sports, some new songs and new singers and, the celebrities here and there. But just it is something saddening because, we don't know why or when that we could start paying attention to such a very important issue. Because it is something that we have to all be following up on, and just to have to be caring for, praying for, just following to know what's going on the ground there.
I know, for example, that last year when the Gaza onslaught was at its height, Facebook was awash with Muslims. Every other comment was comments about Gaza. As their Facebook picture, they had Palestinian flags, they had children suffering. And then 4 weeks after it was finished, not a word about Palestine. And now that a year has gone, it's never mentioned at all.
Yeah, I agree. It's really a problem. Sometimes when the mainstream media starts covering issues like that kind of war, especially with the kind of brutality that it has, so people start paying attention and trying to follow what's the details even of the news stories that are covered here and there. And they try to know what's exactly happening. And then after a while, when the focus is still, is less, and when the attention is paid to something else around, so people start losing, the enthusiasm to be following.
Okay, let's take a step back then. Yeah. For example, in your section at Islam Online, how would you cover the historical background, first of all, to, I don't like to call it the Palestinian issue. That makes it sound like a problem. We love Palestine. It's not a problem. It's not a nuisance that won't go away. We love Palestine. So we want to, and if any of our brothers and sisters in Palestine are watching, brothers and sisters, we love you so much. And our hearts are bleeding for you. And we will do, not just talk, but we will do all that we can to support you, inshallah. So tell us a little about the historical background to the situation.
Actually, just as one of our coverage was about the Al-Aqsa and the city of Al-Quds in general, so we had a very important part in that page, which is the historical background of the conflict. Because, so many people now, especially in the West, think that, they may think that Israel is a very old country in that place, and then there is like two neighboring countries fighting each other. One is Palestine and the other is Israel, which is not the case, of course, because people, don't read history and they don't get back to the roots of the problem itself. So what we have now is that it was like a Palestinian country, which is the original country now, and now so many Jews started to come to the country in 1948. And then this is exactly where Jews were very insistent to have a state for them. They were, Jews, some part of Jews with the Zionist movement in particular, they were, not welcomed or never welcome in countries like Europe and in Russia. And then they started to work for having a unified state for them. And then they choose Palestine to be the country.
And it's also, let me just interrupt and say, that when these Jews came to the land of Palestine, they were very welcome. They're fully entitled to come and live there. And especially if they find that this land is important for their religion. They're very welcome to come and worship. But the problem is they were welcomed with open arms by the Palestinian people living there. And unlike that, the Palestinians have been occupied by many, many nations for many centuries. But when the Jews came, they threw them out of their land. That's what the problem is.
Yes.
Judaism isn't the problem. It's the fact that these people came. It's like. Forgive me for giving this example. It's like the example of a house. You know, someone comes and lives in your house. You invite them to come, and say you can live in the spare room. So they come and you're welcome. You can eat with us, and then over time the people in the spare room begin to spread into the next room and the next, until in the end, the owners of the house are pushed to live in the garden shed. And the house that belongs to them is being occupied by people who don't own the house. And then after 60 years, the original people have died, and their children are living there, and they say, oh, now it's time to talk about peace, really. We should forget the past, and let's make friends, and let's live side by side. But the problem is the people are still living in the garden shed, and you're in their house. There can be no justice, or rather, there can be no peace without justice. This issue has to be solved, first of all. I interrupt you, I'm sorry.
No, not just exactly. I mean, the situation that, and the example that you have given us now is very, very important. I think it's telling that exactly something happened like that. But actually, what was the start of Israel? This is very, very important, and we have to shed light on that, because, you know, it started with gangs. I mean, Jewish gangs and the street thugs who came to the country with the effort of, they tried their best to evacuate the country from all Palestinians.
Okay, can we stop again?
So many
can we stop again? But forgive me, brother,
yes.
But I don't want the audience to think that as Muslims we have any problem with Jews. So instead of talking about Jews, let's use the word Zionists.
Okay.
Because we have no problem with Jews. I have met the chief rabbi of Turkey. I've met rabbis all over the world, and we've talked, and respect one another. But Zionism is a different story, and these Zionist gangs came, you're right, they came to Palestine.
Yeah, I fully understand that. Especially I had also some meetings with some Jewish rabbi who were very, very peaceful, and then they are against the Israel at all. The idea is that, was starting with this kind of Zionist gangs who came to the country, and then they started a very brutal actions against the Palestinians. They tried to, they killed so many children, so many people, and then they tried to push them out of their land, and then it started like that. And then with the help with the British soldiers and the British army were there in the country, and then they did not do anything for protecting the Palestinian civilians. And then it ended up with so many Zionist groups coming to the country day after another, and then with so many Palestinians are forced to leave their countries because their land, their houses, and everything were confiscated from them. So they were forced to leave their countries, which is a problem.
And are living all over the world. I think is it 4.5 million Palestinians are living as refugees all over the world? This is shameful.
I think it's the largest refugee population in the world. I don't think there's a larger population of refugees other than the Palestinians. I remember reading that.
Let's move to the present day then. That's something of the modern history of Palestine. The present day situation, how would you cover what's going on now in Palestine?
Actually, what's happening now, so we are moving in different angles or different perspectives, because, the problem now is manifold. So you have a problem in Gaza, and then you have to follow up what's happening there, because there are people are starving there every day. And then they need help. They need people to, even to be aware about their problem. And then you are trying to see how the organization, aid organization and this relief organizations, how they are working and how they are trying to help and to give hand to those people. This is one side of the story.
And is the food and the help getting in?
Yes, sometimes it is, but it is hardly. It is very, very few, and then the people cannot, because the blockade, it's like 3 years now on that blockade. So people still need more of that. And then on the other side, you will find the Israeli attempts to just destroy all the features of the Islamic country city of Al-Quds.
Jerusalem.
Yeah, Jerusalem, Al-Quds, of course. And then they trying their best to remove any Islamic features, any Islamic characteristics from inside that city, claiming that it is their historical capital of their claimed state, and they say that this is our land and our grandfather's land, and then they're trying to, manipulating the history and the facts with that kind of...
By the way, I think we should mention that there are many Palestinian Christians in Palestine, and it's a shared suffering.
Indeed.
It's not just the Muslims
Indeed
that are in trouble.
Yeah, they're
I think many Christians, viewers that we may have, maybe they don't know that. If you two want to...
And in fact, many of the Arab Christians have left Palestine. Many of them have and the Christian community in the Holy Land is dwindling because their life is just unbearable. As Arabs living in this so-called Israel and in the occupied territories, their life has become unbearable. So, indeed, we're suffering too.
Yeah, it was like, before 1948, it was like 96% were Muslims and Christians, and like 4% Jews. But then what happened now, you can find that the whole story is turning, because so many Arabs and Palestinians started leaving their country because they were forced to do so. And then, we can say, Zionist groups started coming to the country, and then they are now like more than 5 million Israelis
And as for rewriting history, the viewers should also know, maybe they know already, but underneath the Mosque of Al-Aqsa and Al-Buraq Wall, which the Zionists call the Wailing Wall, Muslims believe that this wall, Al-Buraq Wall, has been part of Al-Aqsa Mosque since the beginning of time. And it was against this wall that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ tethered his steed when he was brought in a night journey from Mecca to Jerusalem. So it's been a part of Al-Aqsa for all time. And this rewriting of history, there have been Zionist excavations going on under the blessed Mosque of Al-Aqsa with the express purpose of making it collapse. And they've been searching for 60 years for evidence of Solomon's temple underneath Al-Aqsa Mosque. And in 60 years they have found neither a cup nor a saucer from this so-called temple. So if the temple is supposed to be there, there's no evidence of it. They haven't found one thing of this temple. So you're right, completely rewriting history. And
yes, I think they're trying to, as I said, they're trying to manipulate the history by stating that there has like the Temple Mount underneath the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and they're trying to do their excavation work there. But I think they will find nothing at all, because they are just falsifying the history. Because it is not their land, it's not their place at all, but just they're trying to, to give like proofs or facts, and then they try to find anything that can support their existence there, or just can support their argumentation that one day they had like a country or a civilization or a nation in that place.
Okay, so we talk a little about the modern history, about the present situation, which is a humanitarian disaster beyond all telling. It's crying out to heaven for vengeance. It's so awful what's going on. What of the future?
Actually, this is the most difficult question, because now you cannot expect what may happen tomorrow, because some are talking about a new war in Gaza, some are talking about just demolishing Al-Aqsa Mosque, some are talking about so many different scenarios. So actually the situation is very complicated right now, and no one can say that this one particular scenario will happen. But actually we have, as you said before, we have to be much more optimistic. We have to do our part. We have to do what is in our hand. This is what we can do now. And speaking about the future is something good. Just trying to know what may happen, it's good. But just we have to keep on our duties, our job. What everyone should ask himself or herself: what can I do for helping people there? What is my role? This is, I think, the main question that we
You know, when Al-Aqsa Mosque was at the height of its glory, it was embellished with many beautiful things by Muslim leaders. And Salahuddin, the great Salahuddin, gave the gift of a wooden pulpit, a minbar for Al-Aqsa Mosque. And 30, 40 years ago, this was destroyed by fanatical Zionist terrorists who went into the mosque and set the mosque on fire, and the minbar, the pulpit, was destroyed. And I say, I write in my book, Looking for Peace in the Land of the Prophets, we look forward as Muslims to that day when all the Muslim lands will once more embellish Al-Aqsa with even more beautiful things. You know, when Al-Aqsa and Palestine are in the hands of Muslims once more, how the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the government of Malaysia and the Sultanate of Brunei and all Muslims from all over the world, Muslims in New York gathering their pennies together, will embellish Al-Aqsa Mosque with so many beautiful things, even greater than Salah ad-Din would ever have imagined. And we must never forget, we must never allow these people to lead us to despair, because the victory belongs to Allah, it doesn't belong to them. So we must never be allowed the history to be rewritten, the modern day situation to bring us down. We must always be full of hope, and this is where we are strong. When we have hope, and what these people are trying to do is break our spirit. But you know, I said at the beginning, when I met those men and boys in the hospital, their spirit hadn't been broken, even though their legs had. You know, their spirits are not crushed, even though their buildings had fallen down. Are there any more plans you have on the Politics in-Depth page with Palestine?
Just we are, following up on the issue and trying to see, for example, the tactics of the Israelis, where they are trying, their best to gaining more lands, establishing more settlements. Just we are following closely on that issues and trying to see what are the tactics they are using, what are the policies they may have. This is one part. And then we, on the other side, as I told you, that we are trying to see what can be done for people living in Gaza. Because, they are just living under very, very unhuman conditions.
Okay. Before I ask you to give me some things we can do to help.
By the way, we just have 1 minute left, so
1
as
minute
quickly
left.
as you can.
Well, Islam Online is influenced by the great Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi, the Sheikh of Palestine, the Sheikh of the suffering people of Palestine. So you're guided by his guidance. Just give the audience a few things we could do to help our brothers and sisters in Palestine.
Actually, there are so many things to do, but first of all, we have to start with praying for them. We have to mention them in our prayers every day. Not just saying at some mere words just we are saying, but just we have to feel that. When we pray for them, we have to feel that I might be in their place one day, and then I need to feel what they feel. So I have to be very, very truthful and faithful in my prayers to them. This is on one side. The other side is we have also to tell the people around us about their story, because this way we can make the truth prevail around us. So many people are not educated about the issue there. That's why so many people are not aware of what's happening there, and then even they do not know the roots of the crisis. So we have to tell the people around us, so we have to tell our children, our family members, and this way I think we can this is the least that we can do to keep Palestine as Palestine, not Israel.
Inshallah. Is there a way that the viewers can contact you at Politics in Depth? What do they do?
Yes, just go to the website, islamonline.net, and then you will find at the top of the page the sections of the website, and part of it you will find Politics in Depth.
Inshallah.
Very well.
Thank you very much, Brother Hani.
You're welcome.
Jazakallah khair. We're going to go to a break real quick. We'll be right back, so don't go anywhere. You're watching Let's Talk.
So this is an open invitation for everybody to recognize God and enjoy His blessings in this life and His mercy in this life and in the hereafter as well. Allah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. Each name has a meaning. Each name signifies a nature of Allah the Almighty which no one shares or is compared to Allah in it.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back to Let's Talk. I'm your moderator, Omar Dunlap. We have with us, of course, Brother Idris Tawfiq, and we have our guest, Hani Ramadan, and we're discussing the issue today is Palestine. And I think, Brother Hani, we have some questions from our audience for you, so we'll go ahead.
Sorry. How we could help reduce the Palestinian suffering?
Actually, I think we can think of so many things. For example, if you are living in a very far place, like in Europe or in America, just you can go online to search for the aid organizations, the relief organizations that are working in Palestine. I think it's a very good idea just to know what are these organizations, where they're working, and then try to support them, whether by money, by anything that you can pay for them. This is because this is very important to keep those organizations working on Palestine. You can also tell your friends and your family members about that. This is one say. As I told you before, the first thing we have to do is also to mention them in our prayers. It is very important. And we have to believe that our prayers may change the reality. But still that we have also to go on other materialistic help. So we have to find how can we help. Everyone in his position may help. For example, if you are a journalist, if you are a teacher, if you are even a mother at home, all of you can help just by telling what we can do. Just you can tell others. First of all, you have to tell them about the problem there. You have to tell them about the suffering of your brothers and sisters there, and then you can think together what's the ideas that we can come up with to help those people. I think this is a very simple idea that you can go on.
I want to mention something. We were talking about it during the break, since we're talking about ways to help and so on. One way is to raise awareness of the Palestinian situation. And I wanted to take this opportunity to tell our viewers there's actually a documentary film that's very engaging, and it's made by two Palestinian filmmakers, and it's called Occupation 101. And they have a website for it, occupation101.com, I believe is the website. You can watch the video online, you can order the DVD, and if you have the DVD, you can show it to people, have groups and things and watch this film just to raise awareness so that we know exactly what our brothers and sisters are going through. I think that will.
And it's not always money. Money is very important. And if you have money, give money. But I haven't got any money. The viewers may believe me or not, but I haven't got any money to give anyone. So I can't give any money to anyone. But, by everything I do, inshallah, I'm trying my best to tell people about Palestine. This flag that I wear, I've met many ambassadors and ministers of governments all over the world, and sometimes they look with disdain at this flag. And they look at me as if to say, what are you wearing that for? And I don't care. Because justice and truth is important. And sometimes we have to, as you say, Brother Hani, there are other ways we can work. I wrote a book about Palestine, looking for peace in the land of the prophets. I had no plan to write a book about Palestine, but that little boy Yahya, he just broke my heart, and I felt there was nothing more I can do. So each one in his own way can do something. And it might be a little something, it might be lighting a candle and letting your friends know, or it might be raising millions of dollars. But we can reducing the suffering doesn't just mean with money. People need to know the truth as well. That's very important.
I think we have time for one more question, if we can make it quick. Go ahead, brother.
In a few words, how can you reflect on the Palestinian question in the terms of its political agenda now and inshallah in the future?
The political agenda of which party? You mean?
The political agenda of Palestinian question. Is it going well, or is degraded and so on?
No, actually I think that the Palestinian, for example, we have the Palestinian Authority and the government in Palestine. Now we have two governments actually. But I think the problem is more than that. They are helpless and they cannot do more to the question, to the Palestinian crisis itself. But actually I don't see like a clear or a very, clear agenda that can help in the future. Actually, because living under the occupation, you will not have the right to establish your country, your own state. You will still be, subject to any kind of aggression, any kind of war that would be launched by the other side. So I don't think that it's important now to talk about the Palestinian, government that has the full control, the full control of their land. This is the second step that we can start talking about after just having a place that you can control, and you have a land. You have a land with your own sovereignty and hegemony. On your territory.
Very well.
There's something I want to say, but it's very important. Islam doesn't need anyone's approval. We're not looking for anyone's approval to be Muslims. We don't need it from any country, no matter how powerful they are. We do want a good relation with all people of goodwill. That's for sure as well.
Yes.
But what we should be very careful that we don't do is to settle for the agendas set by other people. And when talking about Palestine, people set agendas for us to talk about, and they're not things we want to talk about. They'll raise this issue and that issue and this issue, and that I would say that, sorry, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about my agenda. You know, we're not looking for the approval of any country. So as Muslims, we should never forget this too. We want to talk about truth and justice, not about this party or that party or this group of leaders. We not want to talk about that. Other people want to distract and to divert our attention from what's going on by concentrating on this politician or that politician. We're not interested in that.
Well, Brother Idris, we have just about 30 seconds left.
Allah.
And I think we can answer this particular email. It's from Brother Yusuf in Egypt, and he says, he asks, is it possible for viewers to take part in the studio audience?
Inshallah, in fact, it is possible. And what you have to do, we've been very remiss in not telling people, talk at huda.tv. If you email us at talk@huda.tv, telling us that you'd like to come and be part of the audience, we would be delighted. And we'll tell you the next time we're recording, and you'll be very, very welcome. We could swell our numbers with as many as want to come. Yeah. So, yeah, come and support us that way. Also support us with your comments. You know, as Muslims, we don't support each other enough.
Right.
You know, we might sit thinking, oh, I loved that show, it was really good. But you don't tell anyone. You know, I like to know sometimes, do people enjoy the work that we're doing? So if you like the show, if you don't like the show, let us know.
Very well.
At least we know that there's someone there watching us.
Right. And I would like to thank our guest, Brother Hanid Ramadan, for being with us. Thank you so much. And I would like to thank, as always, Brother Idris Tawfiq. And until next time, I'm wishing you peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but do not ever quit. Success is a failure turned inside out. Let's talk and clear the clouds of doubt. Success is a failure turned inside out. Let's talk and clear the clouds